Okay, clase, this is our third type of subjunctive. It's called el imperfecto de subjuntivo, or imperfect subjunctive. And it essentially works out to be subjunctive, but in the past. Okay, so what that means, today we're just going to talk about how to form it. Your brains have suffered enough. We'll talk about when it's used tomorrow, okay? So how you form it is pretty easy. You just have to remember that your starting point is completely different than what you've had before. Your starting point is the ellos form of the verb in the preterite. So step number one, you start with the preterite ellos form of whatever verb it is. Step number two, you cut off the ron from the end of the verb because, right, all preterite endings, it's either aron or ieron or eron. So they're all going to end in ron. You cut that off. And then lastly, you add the correct ending, which I will show you on the next slide. Okay, here are your endings. You've got ra, ras, ra, accent ramos, because no matter what, there will be a vowel in front of that R that starts ramos, right? So whatever that vowel is, whether it's an E or an A or whatever, you're going to write an accent over it. So that's why we say accent ramos. And then finally ran, all right? So here's an example of how comer would work out in the imperfect subjunctive. Step number one, I start with comieron because that's my ellos preterite form. Step number two, I cut off that ron, okay? And then that's my stem that I'm left with. Then I add my endings, which again, you can see ra, ras, ra, accent over that vowel, ramos, and then ran, okay? So comiera, comieras, comiera, comiéramos, comieran. This is important because remember, right, it's just going to be really important for you to make it clear if you're writing an O or an A or whatever, because your preterite form of comer is comieron, but your imperfect subjunctive, ellos form, is comieran. One letter different. So you got to really focus on those details. Again, your group of endings work for all groups of verbs. That's one set. You only have one set of endings, and it works for AR, ER, and IR. So comer was an ER verb. Here's bailar as an AR. Still the same thing. Bailaron, cut off the RON. Bailara, bailaras, bailara, bailáramos, bailaran. Right? Again, there's where that accent comes in front of ramos. It's gotta be there. Okay. So that's the nice thing. You only have one set of endings to memorize. Okay. So here would be your nosotros form of escribir, right? Escribieron, cut off the ron, escribiéramos, okay? Two form of deber, start with debieron, debié, debieras. Ustedes from planchar, plancharon, plancha, plancharan, okay? Don't forget about all your irregular preterite verbs, right? Because if a verb is irregular in the preterite, that irregularity is gonna show through in the imperfect subjunctive. So like traer. If you forget that traer is irregular, that it's part of the J group, all your imperfect subjunctive forms are going to be screwed up. Here's what it should look like. Remember, you've got to start with trajeron, okay? Then you cut off the ron, then trajera, trajeras, trajera, trajeramos, trajeran, okay? So if you have the correct starting point, it's pretty easy, but if you forget about those irregular preterites, that's when it becomes hard. Okay, so like just one more example, ella from hacer, right? Again, you've got to start with hicieron. If you don't have that stem correct, if you try to make it like HAC, all your forms are going to be wrong. So hicieron, cut off the RON, okay, ICA, and then add back, hiciera, the ra for ella, okay? And that's it. It's pretty easy to form. You just got to remember those irregular preterites.